You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 11. Lin Cheng becomes a bandit at Liangshan Marsh. Yang Ji sells a sword at Kaifeng. Lin Cheng noticed that the man was wearing a felt hat, with a red tassel on top, a white silk fighting gown, a loose sash, a pair of trousers with the bottom wrapped round with blue and white bands of cloth, like puttees. His socks were of deerskin, and his boots were of undressed cowhide. He had a halberd in his hand, and a sword in his belt. He was over 6 feet high, and his face was covered with blue spots. His mustache and scanty side whiskers were of brown color, his felt cap was hanging down his back by the strings, his loose clothes were displaying his broad breast, and wrapped around his head was a small turban. Pointing his halberd at Lin Cheng, he spoke in a loud voice, "You thief! Where is my baggage?" As Lin Cheng was not in a good temper, he did not reply, but glared at his adversary, and turned up the corners of his mustache. He grasped his halberd, and advanced to fight with the man. Just at that time the weather was clear and bright, with no clouds in the sky. These men in their bloodthirsty struggle trampled down the snow on the bank of a small stream at that spot. They had about 30 bouts, without either side winning or losing. They went on and had about 10 more combats, when they heard on the hillside a loud voice saying, "These two fine fellows, you need not fight any more." Upon hearing this, Lin Cheng leapt to one side out of the ring as an indication that he had stopped fighting. The two men looking up the hillside saw their Wang Luan, the white-clothed scholar, Du Qian, Song Wan, and many other bandits. They descended the hill and crossed the lake by boats. Upon their arrival, Wang Luan said, "You two, good fellows, are expert with the halberd. Quite marvelous. This is my younger brother, Lin Cheng, Leopard's Head. Who are you, the blue-marked face? What is your name?" The man replied, "I am the grandson of Marquis Yang Lingong, and my father and his grandfather were generals. My name is Yang Ji, and I am now wandering about west of the pass. While young I passed a test for my military skill, and had a small position in the Imperial Guard. The Emperor decided to build a palace on Mount Wansui, and deputed 10 of us lieutenants to get the marble from a quarry near the Taihu Lake, near Suzhou, and convey it to the eastern capital. I did not expect bad luck, but in conveying the marble along the Yellow River a strong wind overturned the boat, and the valuable cargo was all lost. I was afraid to go back to my post, and ran away to hide myself in some other place. Since then, however, I have been pardoned. So I got together some money and presents for the officials of the Grand Council at the capital, to try to regain my position. In passing this place I hired a farm laborer to carry my baggage, and did not expect that I should lose it like this. Are you now going to give it back?" "Is not your nickname Blue-Faced Brute?" inquired Wang Luan. "That is so." "As that is the case," said Wang Luan, "please come to our stronghold, and after a few cups of wine I will return your baggage." "You are a fine fellow," said Yang Ji, "and as you know me I think it will be better if you give me my baggage, and never mind about the wine. When I sat for the examinations at the eastern capital a number of years ago," said Wang Luan, "I then heard of your fame. It is very opportune for us to meet here today, so how can I let you depart without entertaining you? Please come to our mountain stronghold just for a little chat. I really have no other intention." Yang Ji agreed to this, and thereupon they all crossed the lake, and ascended the hill to the stronghold. Zhu Gui at the inn was summoned to the stronghold for an interview. They all gathered together in the assembly hall. On the left were 4 seats for Wang Luan, Du Qian, Song Wan, and Zhu Gui, and on the other side were seats for Yang Ji and Lin Cheng. When they were all seated, Wang Luan ordered a sheep to be killed, some wine to be prepared, and made arrangements for a banquet to entertain the guests. While they were dining, Wang Luan thought the situation over, and saw that if they kept only Lin Cheng, he would discover their weakness. But on the other hand, if they got Yang Ji to stay, he would be able to keep Lin Cheng in order. So pointing to Lin Cheng, he said to Yang Ji, "This our younger brother is Lin Cheng, nicknamed Leopard's Head, who previously was drill instructor in the Imperial Guards, but the Marshal Gao Qiu did not like him and banished him to Cangzhou. There was some further trouble at that place so that he has just arrived here. You are a lieutenant and are on your way to the capital to get a position. I do not intend to ask you to join us, but will simply point out that previously I sat for the civil service examination, but afterwards became a brigand. Although you have been pardoned, you will still be regarded as an offender, and therefore you will have a difficulty in getting back your previous post. Moreover, Gao Qiu is still in office, so it is unlikely that he will be willing to give you a position. So would it not be better for you to stay here, and becoming a hero, share with us the silver, gold, wine, and meats? Do you not think this is a better plan? I am much obliged to you for your kind invitation, said Yang Ji, but I have a relative at the capital, who was blamed for my offense, and I have never been able to thank him for his part in the affair. Today I must really go on my way to see him, so I hope that you will let me have my baggage at once. If you do not give it to me, then I must depart empty-handed. Wang Luan laughed at this and said, You say you will not stay, so how can I use force and compel you to join our band? I must ask you to rest here for the night at least, and depart tomorrow. Yang Ji was much pleased with this settlement, and after drinking wine together, until about 10 o'clock they each went to their separate rooms to sleep. The following day they were up very early, and after breakfast the bandit chief detailed a man to carry the baggage and accompany Yang Ji down the mountain. All the leaders went down the mountain, across the lake, and put Yang Ji on the road again, where they bade him adieu, and then returned to their stronghold. Wang Luan told Lin Cheng that he would take thereafter the 4th seat, and Zhu Gui, the 5th. Now we will not go into the question of the fighting and looting of these 5 leaders and their bandits on Liangshan Marsh. Yang Ji soon found a man to carry his baggage, and then dismissed the bandit soldier, who went back to the stronghold on the hill. Within a few days he reached the eastern capital. Finding an inn, he stopped there. He duly paid the countryman for carrying his baggage and dismissed him. Taking off his sword and putting his baggage in a room, he gave the waiter a little money to go and buy some wine and meat for him. After a few days he requested a man to go to the Grand Council and make some arrangement for his case to be reconsidered. He also took the silver and gold articles and sent them to the higher and lower officials with a request that he should be reinstated with his rank of lieutenant. When he had expended all his presents, an order came instructing him to call and see the Marshal Gao Qiu. Upon Yang Ji's arriving at the headquarters, Gao Qiu looked at his official record and was very angry. He spoke in a loud voice, I see from this record that 10 lieutenants were deputed to bring marble, but 9 executed the work, and you were the only one who lost a cargo. You did not even come and report the loss, but instead ran away to avoid being arrested. Although you were pardoned of this serious offense, yet I cannot give you a commission in the army again. He then made his mark on the record and gave an order that Yang Ji be driven away. That hero left the headquarters in a very melancholy frame of mind. Upon arriving at his inn he thought matters over, and saw that Wang Luan was quite right in the advice he had given him. But as his family had a clean record, he could not join their band and disgrace his parents. He hoped that he might by meritorious service at some distant frontier again establish a good reputation for himself, and even add to the luster of his ancestors, and make it better for his descendants. He did not, however, expect this rebuff. Marshal Gao. How malicious you are. How cruel. He was in a state of mental agony for some time. He stayed at the inn for a few days until all his money was spent. Then he wondered what he must do. His ancestors had bequeathed him the best of swords which he had always carried with him. But now that he was in difficulty he had to go on the street and try to sell this sword for several hundred strings of cash. That would enable him to get away to some other place. So he tied some grass to the sword to indicate that it was for sale, and went out. He went to the horse market street and stood there for a long time, without any inquiry being made. In the afternoon he removed to the Tianhanshao bridge where there was more traffic. When he had been standing there a short time he noticed that the men on both sides of the bridge ran off to hide in the alleyways near the bridge. While Yang Ji was looking on at this confusion he heard some men say, Hide quickly. The big tiger is coming. Yang Ji said, How strange. This is the capital, and yet there is a big tiger here. Looking along the street, he noticed in the distance a big black man coming who was evidently half drunk as he staggered along. Yangji then remembered that he had previously heard that in the capital there was a bully called Neo Air whose nickname was Hairless Tiger. He had the reputation of always making rows and fighting on the streets. He had been before many magistrates, but even the prefect had not been able to make him submissive, and therefore when he came on the street everybody ran away to hide until he had passed. On this occasion he hurried up to Yangji and took the sword out of the latter's hand. He asked, "How much do you want for this sword?" Yangji informed him that it was an excellent sword and an heirloom, but he was willing to sell it for 3,000 strings of cash. "What sword is this that you want so much money for?" asked Nioer. "I can buy a good sword for 30 cash which will cut up meat and bean curd." "What is there about this sword that will justify you in calling it an excellent sword?" "This sword," said Yangji, "is not for use in cutting up meat, but is an excellent sword." "But why do you call it an excellent sword?" asked Nioer again. Yangji said, "This sword will cut through copper or iron without the edge being blunted, and again if you blow a hair against the edge the hair will be cut in half, and yet again if you kill a man there will be no blood left on the blade." Nioer asked, "But dare you cut copper with it?" Yangji said, "If you bring some cash here then you can see whether it will cut or not." Nioer went to a peppermint shop at the side of the bridge and demanded 20 copper coins valued at 3 cash each. He put these on the stone railing of the bridge and said to Yangji, "If you can cut those in half I will give you 3,000 strings of cash for the sword." The people did not dare to come and see what was taking place, but they stood around in the distance looking on. Yangji said, "That will easily be done." He took the sword and taking a careful steady aim he cut the coppers in half with one stroke. The crowd seeing what he had done applauded. Nioer said, "What are you people applauding for?" He then turned to Yangji and asked him what was the second thing that the sword could do. Yangji said that if he got several hairs, and put them on the edge of the sword, and then blew, the hairs would be entirely cut in half. Nioer did not believe this, but he pulled some hair from his own head, handed them to Yangji and said, "You blow, and I will watch." Yangji taking the hair in his left hand, put it against the edge of the sword, and with his blowing very hard the hair fell to the ground cut in half. The crowd had increased in size and applauded this. Nioer asked, "What was the third thing this sword can do?" Yangji said, "If a man is killed there is no sign of blood on the blade." Nioer asked, "How can that be?" Yangji said, "It cuts so quickly that the blood has no time to get on the blade." Nioer said, "I don't believe that. But you just kill a man, and I will see whether that will happen." Yangji said, "This is the imperial city so how dare I kill a man here? But as you do not believe what I say, then get a dog and I will kill it, and you will then see what happens." Your claim was to kill a man, and you did not say anything about a dog. Yangji said, "I suppose you don't really want to buy. But why are you wasting my time by such remarks?" "Let me have a look at the sword," said Nioer. Yangji replied, "You are still talking without coming to the point. I did not ask you to come here to buy the sword, and I am not a person with whom you can pick a quarrel." "Very well," said Nioer, "perhaps you had better kill me." "I had no quarrel with you before," said Yangji, "and now our bargaining has been fruitless, so why should I kill you?" Nioer took hold of Yangji and said, "I most certainly want to buy your sword." "If you want to buy then bring the money," said Yangji. "I have no money," said Nioer. "As you are without money why do you hold me like this?" "Because I want your sword." "Then I won't give it to you." "As you are a brave man you may give me a cut with the sword," said Nioer in a provocative voice. Yangji became angry at this and pushed Nioer down on the ground. Nioer got up and butted his head against Yangji's breast. Yangji then addressed the surrounding crowd, "Neighbors, you have witnessed what has happened. I have no money and want to sell this sword. This bully is determined to have it, and has assaulted me, and wants to fight. The neighbors were all afraid of Nioer, and therefore nobody stepped forward to mediate in the quarrel. Nioer shouted, "You say that I have assaulted you, so if I do hit you it won't matter, I suppose." So saying he lifted up his right hand to strike Yangji. But Yangji drew back, seized his sword, and thrust the point of it into the neck of Nioer, who fell down. Yangji stepped forward, and thrust his sword twice into the breast of Nioer. The blood gushed out, and the latter was soon dead. Yangji spoke to the crowd of people, "I have killed this rascal, and I do not want any of you to be blamed for it. As he is quite dead now, I want you to come with me to the yamen, and report voluntarily as to how it was done." The bystanders came forward, and accompanied Yangji to the yamen to give evidence. Upon arrival they found that the prefect was in the court, so they all crowded in and knelt down. Yangji placed the sword before the prefect, and said, "I was previously a lieutenant in the Imperial Guard, but was dismissed owing to having lost a cargo of marble. As I had no money, I took my sword to the street with the object of selling it. While I was there, a blackguard named Nioer came and tried to take the sword from me by force and also assaulted me. Because of this I got angry and killed him." All these men saw what happened. The bystanders confirmed this statement with many details. The prefect said that as Yangji had come forward and confessed the crime, he would not inflict the usual punishment of beating with the bamboo. He then instructed the coroner with 2 assistants to go and hold a post-mortem examination of the body. A kang was put on Yangji, who, with all the bystanders, departed with the coroner to the Tianhanshou Bridge. Upon their arrival, a careful examination of the body took place, and after having recorded the inquisition, they returned to the yamen, where the evidence of the bystanders was recorded, and duly attested by them. They were then released by bail, and Yangji was sent to prison. In the prison, the superintendent, jailers, and turnkeys did not ask Yangji to give them money this time, but instead they took pity on him, and treated him well, because they heard that he had killed for the people the hairless tiger, Nioer. Moreover, the neighbors near the Tianhanshou Bridge collected money, some of which they gave to Yangji, and with another part they purchased food, and sent it to him, and another part was given to the prison officials with a request that they should treat Yangji well. The magistrate who considered the case saw that Yangji was a good man, and had rid the capital of a great bully. As no relatives or mourners had come forward from Nioer's family, the judge decided to give a very light sentence. At several cross-examinations, Yangji, besides confessing the crime, made it clear that he had done it unintentionally and in a fit of temper. After keeping Yangji in prison for 60 days without anything further turning up, the judge reported to the prefect that the prisoner Yangji had been given 20 blows with the bamboo, the kang had been removed, he had been branded on both sides of his face, and he recommended that he be banished to the northern capital, Daming Prefecture. The sword was ordered to be confiscated. The prefect thereupon issued an order that 2 aides, named Zhang Long and Zhao Hu, were to escort Yangji, and that the prisoner was to have only a light kang weighing 10 pounds. The wealthy people in the neighborhood of the Tianhanshou Bridge collected money to present to Yangji, and then waited there for him and his escort to pass. Upon their arrival they were asked to adjourn to an inn for some food and wine. There they presented some silver to the escort, and said, "We think that Yangji is a good man, and has rescued us from much danger and trouble, and we therefore hope that you will look after him well on the road to Daming." Chang Long and Zhao Hu said, "We are already aware that he is a good man, so you need not give us any orders, and may rest assured that we will treat him well." After the people had also given Yangji plenty of money to cover his traveling expenses, they all departed. Yangji then got his escort to take him to the inn where he had previously stayed, and there he invited them to take food and wine with him. He paid the money owing for the room he had occupied, got together his clothes, and also bought some plasters, which he applied to the sores left on him as a result of the bamboo he had been beaten with. All 3 then started off on the road towards Daming Prefecture. On the road there was a single stone every 5 li, and 2 stones every 10 li. At every town and city Yangji bought meat and wine, which he asked his escort also to partake of. They walked during the day, and slept at inns for the night. In a short time they duly reached Daming. Upon arriving there they found an inn at which they stayed. At that time the commander-in-chief had his headquarters at the northern capital, Daming, where he had great power and authority as he not only controlled the army, but in addition governed the people. The commander-in-chief was Grand Secretary Liang, the son-in-law of the Prime Minister Kai Jing. It was the 9th day of the second lunar month when the escort arrived with Yang Ji, and they delivered the report to that commander-in-chief, who was at the headquarters at that time. Now it happened that Grand Secretary Liang had known Yang Ji at the time he was stationed in the eastern capital. Upon reading the report he at once asked how it had happened that he had left the army. Yang Ji explained how he had been dismissed from the army by Marshal Gao, and how he had spent all his money in bribing officers to get him reinstated. How he had tried to sell his sword on the street, and during a fit of temper had killed Muir. He told him every detail of his affairs. When Grand Secretary Liang heard it all he was much pleased. He gave orders for the Kang to be removed, and that Yang Ji was to be employed at headquarters. The reply for the eastern capital was sent off by the escort. At Liang's headquarters Yang Ji was very diligent and attentive at his duties. The commander-in-chief noticed this and decided to give him a commission in the army with a salary attached to it. But as he was afraid of some opposition to this from the other officers he issued a general order that all ranks should proceed to the drill ground outside the east gate, 2 li from the city, where there would be a general parade and inspection of the troops. On the evening of the same day, when he issued this order Grand Secretary Liang sent for Yang Ji to come and see him. Upon his arrival he spoke to him, "I have thought of giving you a commission in the army with a suitable salary. But I do not know what training or skill you have in military matters. I previously passed a military examination and obtained a commission. I in fact learned the 18 military arts when I was quite young. I am much obliged to you for your mentioning this, and this seems to me as the emerging of the sun from among the clouds. Should I be promoted I shall be only too glad if I had the opportunity of doing some services to you." Grand Secretary Liang was much pleased upon hearing this, and presented him with an officer's uniform and armor. The following day was the middle of the second month, and the weather was warm with a little breeze. After breakfast Grand Secretary Liang and Yang Ji mounted their horses, and with a bodyguard both in front and behind proceeded outside the east gate. Upon their arrival at the parade ground, the large number of troops and officers stood to attention. They proceeded to the inspection platform, where they dismounted, and Grand Secretary Liang took his seat in a chair ornamented with silver. On either side of him stood the officers, staff officers, drill masters, generals, commanders, adjutant generals, captains, and lieutenants. Before and behind were numerous minor officers. Near his chair stood his 2 chief generals Li Cheng nicknamed Li, the King of Heaven, and Wen De nicknamed Wen, the Great Sword. These 2 were the most skilled in the military arts. They led their foot and cavalry troops before the platform for inspection, and they all saluted Liang by calling out Nua 3 times. A yellow flag was floating over the platform, and on both sides were about 50 drums and trumpets, which kept up a rhythm of sounds 3 times each alternately. Everything else was very quiet. A large white flag was then unfurled on the platform, and all the troops stood to attention upon seeing this. A red signaling flag was next unfurled, and the drums and trumpets burst forth to draw attention to it, and immediately 500 soldiers wheeled round into 2 sections, holding their swords in their hands. A small white signaling flag was next waved, and all the officers on horseback assembled in front of the platform, and there reined their steeds in. Grand Secretary Liang summoned Lieutenant Zhou Jin, and that officer galloped forward, dismounted in front of the platform, stuck his spear in the ground, stood to attention, and at the same moment replied in a loud voice Noah. Grand Secretary Liang then told him to go through his fencing drill. Upon hearing this order Lieutenant Zhou Jin took his spear, mounted, and went through a display of cavalry horsemanship and sword drill in front of the platform, and was applauded by the troops. Grand Secretary Liang then summoned Yang Ji, and upon that officer's arrival he spoke to him, "Yang Ji, I know that previously you were an officer at the eastern capital, but have been banished here because of some fault. Just now the bandits are giving a lot of trouble, and the government must employ men to suppress them. Now are you willing to have a bout with Zhou Jin so that I can see your skill, and whether you are suitable for a commission? If you defeat Zhou Jin you can have his rank and duties. As you, my benefactor, ask me to do this I must do it, said Yang Ji. Grand Secretary Liang then gave orders for a male suit of armor, suitable arms, and a horse to be placed at Yang Ji's disposal, while he was fencing with Zhou Jin. Yang Ji went to the rear of the platform, and put on the armor and helmet, which had been presented to him the night previously. He took a bow, an arrow, and with a sword at his side, and a spear in his hand, he mounted a horse and rode forth. Grand Secretary Liang then gave orders that Yang Ji and Zhou Jin must fence first with spears only. Upon hearing this Zhou Jin was angry, and said, "This banished criminal. He dares to fence with me." Who could know that Yang Ji was also extremely angry at having to fence with Zhou Jin? At the tourney Yang Ji was famous. Soon an army none so dangerous. We will now relate how this fencing match turned out.